and welcome to this edition of Get Real with Rick Dancer. We're glad to have you here. We have a super interesting show, and it's I don't know, it is full of heartache. It's also full of tragedy. Um, Today's episode has a dash of stupidity and ignorance. Um, and lots of need for change. As many of you know, there are several people missing right now in the state of Oregon. And we've covered Michael Bryson, many people, Shane, the person we're going to talk about today a little bit, but many people missing. And it just doesn't seem to get the attention sometimes of law enforcement, of people. And we're going to talk to some folks about that. But this case is this is really weird. So a young man, Shane, well, he's not young, but he's younger than me, so that makes him young. Disappeared up the McKenzie. They found his arm, and then I'm going to let the people involved tell you this story. But they found a skull, and it's been sitting in an evidence locker in Clackamas County, and nobody's bothered to test it. And we have all these missing people, and nobody's bothered to test the thing. And so a group of people who've all, the Brysons, a bunch of people who've have had missing relatives, went together, and they were supposed to have to pay for this, but there's been a change, and we're going to find out more about that today too. But so I guess in Oregon, in order to find out if a bone or a skull belongs to your relative or someone who's missing, up until this decision was changed, you had to pay for that, at least in this case. I know, it's just bizarre. I've never heard anything like this. But we're going to talk with family members just a sec. But first, our sponsors tonight are Chris Natal Family Dentistry. Dr. Bratlin's a great guy. He loves freedom of speech. He loves to fight censorship. He likes for your voice to be heard. And he, along with others, we just try to get information out there that you may not hear. So if you're looking for a dentist who really cares about where you live and cares about your freedom, give him a call. I'll tell you what, I've never heard of a dentist who actually gives all of his patients, not just me, I'm his friend. He gives all of his patients his cell phone number in case you have a problem. I wouldn't give you my cell phone number. I don't want you calling me about a hurt molar in the middle of the night, but he'll do that. Okay, so let's bring our guests on. Here, Candace, welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. And yourself this evening?
I'm good. So Candace, you're like a little rabble rouser out there.
Yeah, I like to stir the pot.
Okay, so before we get into this story, why don't you tell how you got involved with this group of the club that no one wants to be in? And kind of explain that. And because is that Dylan over your head?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So can I tell us a little bit about that? Because we need to get that.
Yeah. So Dylan was murdered Memorial Day weekend, 2022. And the case was just crazy. We had a huge fight on our hand from law enforcement. It was pretty intense, and we just really pushed. And so through all of this, it was actually Michael Bryson's mom, Tina, was one of the first other moms to reach out to me. I kind of gained this circle of people that I've started helping on their cases. Dylan's case, we recovered him. It'll be a year ago tomorrow as part of a plea deal. And like I was telling you, this fight to change laws that I have, the man who murdered Dylan, he basically executed him. He got more time for having the guns that he killed him with than for killing Dylan.
And he shot Dylan twice in the head, right?
Twice in the head with two different guns. Yeah.
Once he got more time in prison for possessing that gun because he was a felon than he did for killing your kid.
Correct. He got 1 to 15 for murdering Dylan, and he got 2 to 15 for having the guns, for a total of 3 to 15. But like I said, we have got that law changed in Utah this year, so that's amazing. So now it goes 15 to life. But I didn't know there was so many of these problems out there. The lab problems, the fight with law enforcement, Dylan was basically swept under the rug, and it's kind of an unspoken thing nobody wants to say. We can talk about people of other races, which I don't believe in, But honestly, the single, well, they don't even have to be single, but realistically, the single white young males get the least attention of anyone.
I just
It's horrible. And it's true. And I work on these cases and I see it consistently. There is only one case that I'm actively working on that is not a white male, and all these other, well, yeah, I help these families, but they get the attention. And for, to me, we don't have a race, we're Americans. Race should never ever play a card in this, but it really is. And so as I worked with it and I've got to know Misty, Shane's sister, and the Brysons, and the Furkies, and all these people in Lane County that I'm helping. That's another thing that we've realized there's a really big issue in, is the fact that, I mean, Lane County welcomes the help. I'm going to give Lane County some kudos, because they have welcomed in our canines. They have welcomed in. I'm teaching them on some phone data. They have allowed us to help get this skull moved. They're not fighting us. They are truly understaffed. And they're not properly trained. I mean, let's just be honest. There's no proper training on these detectives. They'll get moved from a deputy to a detective super fast.
Do you think it has now with your son? What what was his background? Was there?
So Dylan bought a farm. So he's 19, and he'd saved, and him and his grandpa bought 640 acres in Lucin, Utah. And you'd hear through Dylan's case, oh, it's so remote. It's this, it's that. No, it's not. It used to be a luscious, great farm. The people who farmed it was a big corporation, la da da. The dad dies, the kids sell it off. He was out on his farm. The guy who shot him, Dylan employed. He took care of him. And then when we called him in missing, it was Monday, May 30th. We knew he was planting Saturday, May 28th, which is when he was murdered. And I mean, Dylan would have been out there, watching the ground, making sure his seeds were sprouting, and he disappears. And we were literally laughed at. And I will never lay off of Box Elder County on that. We were laughed at. We were left alone. We were told he went out partying. It's Memorial weekend. He's probably in Vegas. I'm like, what?
Isn't that what happens a lot? Because like with Michael, I know, and I think also with Shane, they've been partying and doing some stuff like that, and it feels like, I mean, I partied, hard,
right,
young, and it's like, but it seems like sometimes police departments and sheriff's departments write off people. Well, they have a history of this, and they're like,
yeah, but doesn't matter, Rick, and that's what I try to
no,
get. It doesn't matter, and then you want to take and you want to portray that onto any person who goes missing. Well, there had to be drugs or alcohol involved. Okay, whether or not there is doesn't matter. But it does help change the search when you look at how we look at it on our canine aspect and with our drone pilots. It gives us a better idea. Well, okay, if the person was doing this, it kind of changes how we search and what we're looking for, right? That's the only thing it changes in our eyes,
right.
Not the attention that the people get.
So were you always like a badass?
I've been told that a few times.
So,
That's
it's
great.
You're like a badass. Like you jump on this.
Well,
You're like a mama bear, and it's like you're farting around with my cub, and
I didn't know this stuff needed changed. I mean, I work with U.S. Marshals, FBI agent, law enforcement now, and I tell them how it is. This is what you guys are missing, and this is how. And I do a lot of advocating and a lot of liaison in between law enforcement and families, and so it's like this training we had in Utah last week, and I looked around and I told all the guys that were there from Utah, I'm like, listen, you guys need a better advocate program, because you're a bunch of liars. And I use some colorful words. I don't care what you tell a mom, it's never enough. Now, if you tell me, and I can go to that mom and say, listen, I understand what's going on. I know why they're doing what they're doing. And please, you got to trust me. Let them do this. It's different coming from me, because I'm not going to lie to them.
Right.
I'm not going to BS them, and I'm not going to try to glorify what's going on. But there is some homicide cases I'm active in where I go to the families and I say, listen, you got to let them do this because of stuff going on.
So Tina Magnuson, Michael Bryson's mother, who, and people from Lane County, about Michael Bryson. He's disappeared several years ago. Our first detective said Michael was out chasing gnomes and he would be found by a mushroom picker or hunter. What does
Yeah.
that do to your psyche as a parent when what
Oh,
you're waiting for my kid to be found by a mushroom picker or a
you
hunter?
know, and it's actually funny how much these law enforcement agencies will listen to these crazy tips. There was a lot. Dylan took off with some other guy, and he was gay, whatever. It was all a bunch of fabricated crap from the public, from the armchair detectives. Now, in the first day of the search for Dylan, we found his boots not 200 yards, and Dylan only had one pair of boots. Anybody who knows Dylan's case knows how much I've harped on. The kid has a pair of Georgia work boots. That's it. We found his boots about 300 yards from where the guy who shot him was living in his camper with blood on them, Rick, with blood on them. And they're still like, whatever. Yeah. I mean, visibly blood on them. Like, we got a problem.
So
And
so tell me about this skull. Let's get into the skull. So when did you find out about this skull?
so Misty told me, I want to say it was probably September, that there were remains. And she forwarded me, it might have been August, September. She forwarded me all the emails from the lab, and she was trying to work through things like we just have to wait to get them tested, right? That's because that's what you're told. Because that's true if you don't know how to push it. And so then it took me a little bit to get involved heavily because it was right during we were doing Dylan's memorial, and I just had to step back for a minute. And so then once I went out on the search for Brian Furkey in January and was able to meet with the detective, and I found out it was a skull. And I did the same thing with Misty. I told Misty, I said, look, I know what these remains are, but I'm not going to tell you right now because I've been told in confidentiality. Well, then the lab started emailing me, and all the confidentiality was taken out so I could tell her. But I told her, I said, you got to trust me. This is important, but we got to work through it. And here we are. We're getting it done, and
Okay, let's
it's
bring Misty on
huge.
here real quick. Hang on. Hi, Misty.
Hello.
So Misty's been on before. Your brother Shane disappeared when?
November 2nd of 21.
And I'm going to put up a picture of him. In fact, let me do something real quick because that's kind of rude if I'm taking you out. Let's get you there. And now we'll put the picture in. There, get rid of Rick Dancer's ugly face. Ladies, that's way better. So, Misty, tell us what happened with Shane.
So he went to work bright and early like he normally does. Reportedly then goes home for lunch, and that's the last time that he's seen. That's like a Tuesday. The folks that were there at his home that day didn't report missing until I believe it was Friday or Saturday. Some of these details get lost because so much time has passed. But basically, just a ton of red flags from the very start, and things never added up.
Yeah, and isn't this a case where I don't know how much we can say, I don't remember, but wasn't there someone in his life that you suspect is probably involved? Is that a way to say it?
Yeah, I mean, there were 4 people there that day. One has since passed away. One is his wife, who still lives there. And then 2 others. One has since moved back to our hometown where we live in Minnesota. And then there's one out there still.
So
But they had
we
a small group of people. Like,
so when did they find his remains? Where did they find him, and what did he find? What did they find?
so his arm was found in August of 22 and confirmed to be his April of 23. And then this additional remains, the skull, was found September of 23 and is just now making it to the lab.
So you don't know for sure that this is his, but it was found near the other stuff.
We don't know. We haven't really had much communication with the detective. I think Candace has probably talked with them more than we have recently.
So
Yeah.
what does it mean for you if this skull actually belongs to Shane?
It doesn't. I mean, we already know the outcome, right? So it doesn't really change too much for us unless, well, two things. Does it show anything? You know, are there bullet holes? Does it show, is there something that can
Cause
tell us?
of death. Cause of death is what we are hoping it might show. But
Thank you.
For you as a family member, though, as his sister, is it also kind of, I, I hate the word closure because it never goes away because these are your relatives. How can you ever have closure? But it's just that you're kind of, it's important to put people back together. You know what I mean? I know I don't mean that in a harsh way. I just mean that everything that you can find goes back together. So Shane gets to leave the way he came in as a whole person. You know, I don't know. Is that it makes me
Right.
teary just thinking about it? But that
Like
really,
Candace said, you know, it's such a personal part of somebody.
yeah, and especially the skull.
Right.
yeah. Yep.
So Candace, where is this now? Like, where is this story now? So tell people about how the skull. So the skull comes in, and then they're not going to pay for it to get it done. So you guys actually raise money or something. Explain that to people.
Yeah, so here's kind of what happened. So once I found out it was a skull, well, and it wouldn't have mattered what it was, right? But to me it doesn't matter. But a skull, when you put that out there publicly, and you know, we unfortunately have to market our missing people. Well, we also have to market the remains that have been found. So we kind of took the run of, okay, we are going to we're going to move forward, and we got the permission from the detective to, yeah, if you can get it done. And the detective gave the lab full permission to do whatever the email says, you know, whatever Candace needs to do. But to be able to publicly step out, and as I've said, we literally, we raised money. Shane's mom paid for most of it, which is now going to go to the search, but we raised other money that's going to stay with Bodhi Technology for future testing like this. We literally put a price on somebody's head. That is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
We had to step in, and you know, I kind of worked through it when Missy and I first started talking about it. I'm like, no, we can do something. I know we can do something. Now, we would have had it done faster, but this is how lovely these labs are. The chief medical examiner retired at the end of January, or we would have had it done by the first or second week in February. Nobody's been able to sign off on it because apparently we only have one medical examiner in the Clackamas office that can do this.
Oh my gosh.
So that's only if they have full teeth. We don't know the state of the skull. You've got to have a top and bottom jaw for dental records. So we don't know the state of the skull, or is it just the top part? Is it, and you got to think, and I know this is morbid, but I mean, if you realistically think about it, as this times went on, it's the same thing with how Dylan was found. Your bottom jaw is not with your top jaw. All the tissue's gone that holds it together. So dental records aren't always, you know, and they're not reliable if you only have one jaw.
So they will now take this. So you found out yesterday. What's the good? So you guys raised more than $3,500, which is what it costs to do this. So now to finish a case in Oregon, you have to pay. You have to pay for your own. That is such bullshit.
So let me clarify this so people understand. You either have to wait for their time frame, or you pay for it to go to a private lab. This is not being done in Oregon. This is being sent to Bodhi Technology in Pennsylvania, which is also who built Shane's DNA profile that they compare to the arm. So this is a good thing about this. Bodhi Technology already has Shane's full DNA panel. Okay. So they'll test. So they're going to pull DNA off the skull. We start with Shane. And then if it's not Shane, then we start rolling through everybody missing. You know, Michael Bryson, Chase Robinson. Now I see Tammy Brazil. We got a new one I need to look into there. So we will continue. And so we raised above the funds that we need. So this is not cheap stuff, and a lot of families don't have the means, right? So we will just continue with the rate, because if we got to keep testing, I, it's it is one thing to be working to find a body out wherever. I don't care where, just somewhere where there's nobody missing in the area, in the vicinity, right? So when you have these people missing in the area, then you've got a test to go against, and we got full DNA panels on all of these men. We have them. We've got their families. Why are we not doing this?
Right. It seems it's kind of cruel, don't you think?
Oh, it's terrible. There's still part of Dylan's remains sitting in a lab that were from a burn barrel that they burnt evidence, which had some of Dylan's bones that we've still never got done. We've still never got done because we got a confession. And so they're like, whatever. Well, you know what? That's my son. How would you feel if it was your son? That's what I told Box Out. How would you feel if it was yours? And here's the other thing. What if it's not? So what if it's not any of these young men we have missing up on the Mackenzie? What if that's not Dylan's bone fragments in that burn barrel? Then what? Now we got a bigger problem. You need to know who it is. And it's not as difficult as what everybody thinks. It should be done faster. It should be done in a timely manner. And it should be respectable. It's so disrespectful.
Is that how you feel, Misty? Is like, this is kind of like, and I hope I'm not being harsh or anything like this, but like, it's like, I think that what we get, maybe this is from television and watching TV shows, body found, they do the DNA search, they do, the testing and everything, and everybody finds out what's going on. When in reality, it would feel like that Shane didn't matter.
Right. Not a priority at all. And then the testing itself, the first round, it was about 9 months wait, for that confirmation the first time. And that, like, I can't even really describe what that wait is like. It's.
And in your case, it's like people who are possibly suspects are dying. So,
right.
You know what I mean? So the time is of the utmost importance to find out, because that kind of bug you too, that you feel like they're going to get away with it?
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when a case like yours, well, I guess Dylan the same, and we don't know with Michael Bryson or the rest of somebody who did this actually knew him, but chances are pretty damn good that they did, because aren't most people who kill somebody else, somebody that's related to them? Gosh, my heart goes out to you and your family. I am so sorry. And
yeah, and I want to respond to Linda Smith. So this is what I need the public to understand, and why we want to change laws on these labs and get funding. Once the evidence is turned over to the lab, this is no longer in the hands of the detectives. They are at the mercy of the labs, okay? So they can't go in and say, this case is more important and I'm going to put it in front of everybody's. That is not how this works. It's no different than once a case has been investigated and it's turned over to the prosecuting attorney, or once somebody is booked into jail and gets to go in front of the judge, that officer doesn't get to say whether or not the person gets let out, right? So you got to look at each part of our justice system. This is a big problem, is they are not working hand in hand. They're not working with each other the way they should be. So everybody wants to take it back to the detectives and to the deputies. I'm sorry, this is... The deputies book a guy like James Brenner on violent charges. I mean, James Brenner was arrested twice during Dylan's case. He's let out once, and he was going to be let out the second time had the feds not nabbed him. Do you think the officer who hauled him in and finally got to arrest him was happy with that? Right. No, I know the guy personally. I'm still friends with him. But he can't do anything about what the judge does. Okay, so this is where it's the same thing. You turn your evidence into the lab, you wait. The detectives are waiting just like we are. That's why we were able to get the permission from Lane County to say, man, if you can push him along, get it done for us.
And you did.
And we did. And we got it done.
So here's Eva, or I think it's Eva. I'm a genetic genealogy and I'm not sure if it would be of any help whatsoever, but if this DNA profile gets uploaded into GED Match, I'd be happy to donate my services and help figure out who it
Okay.
belongs to.
I will find out, Eva, so I'm in direct contact with Bodhi Technology. I'm actually going to one of their trainings this spring, so I'll get with them and see if that's something. They've kept Shane's case open as looking at it as a criminal case. So I don't know what Bodhi Technology is going to be able to release privately. We'll have to find that out. Oh, hang on. Just a second.
So, Misty, I'll go back to you. So, do you feel like you're getting close to this? Are you pretty on pins and needles to find out more about this doll? Is this kind of like?
Yeah, I mean, anxious to know whether it's Shane, but also, and if it's not, you know, if there's a family, somebody's waiting for that answer.
And if there is a gunshot wound, then does that give you that maybe the detective something they can go back and say, that's what you're hoping for, right?
I would hope that it would like push something forward. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
is Candace a badass?
Yes. It seems
I tell you what, I wouldn't want her looking for me.
We're very grateful because Shane's case was pretty much at a standstill. Like we didn't know what to do, who we should contact, what, you know. So she's been amazing and we're very grateful.
Misty, how has this, you guys have become like the Brysons. I know they kind of got a lot of this stuff started, like kind of connecting people and getting people together and stuff. And how has this has really formed a coalition of badasses. I mean, it really has.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like, I think you started off with like it's a club that no one wants to be a part of, but I'm forced into it. And
what is the thing, Misty, that you take away the most from this at this point? I know that's a hard question.
That's a hard question.
It can be negative. I would be really interested if it's just you and me sitting there and there's nobody around. I'd say, what's the positive that you've learned from this? And what's the negative that you never imagined?
Well, losing your family member in whatever way, you can only imagine what maybe happened. Just not knowing maybe who to trust is an issue now. And the positive, I guess, is just the connection made with people that you would have never probably crossed paths with before.
Because you live where?
Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota. Okay, just bringing the world together. So, Candace, what have you learned that's positive?
My biggest thing that I've learned in that I'm a huge advocate now is public safety. We can all play a role, right? And I hear people tell me all the time, you'll never get this law changed. You'll never get this done. This isn't going to get done. Good luck with that. And I'm like, yeah, watch me. I have learned that don't wait until it happens to you to play an active role in public safety. We got how many officers per how many people? I mean, it's not even close. Like, we are very ignorant to think that we can't play a role in this. And that has just been a huge push for me. And knowing that like our data testing and all the stuff that I'm doing with Bad Jab with Aaron out of Plano, Texas, we're saving lives now through this technology that we're bringing into law enforcement to train that probably wouldn't be saved. We're recovering victims. We're giving families some peace to be able to lay them to rest. We can all play a role in that. And that's just been a huge positive for me, is learning that.
What were you doing before you did this? What was you were a mom, but what else did you do?
Yeah, I own a trucking company and a lumber company, and then I run the flowers at Costco, and then I bebop around and breed dogs. I don't know, you name it, a bunch. But I still do all of that.
Did you ever think? I mean, obviously, you never thought you'd be doing. I mean, this has changed your world.
Yeah, and like I I'm pretty lucky. Idaho is a pretty solid state. So even when there's a case in Idaho, they're like Johnny on the spot. I mean, look at the Idaho 4 murders. Look at the DeBell case. Like Idaho is a very solid spot. So we're not exposed. And I never paid much attention to media because, I've never trusted them, even before this. But so everything we've seen on cases, like the shit that's happened is what's supposed to happen. Like they're on it. Idaho's
Right.
solid. So then to start working through these other states, and I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. I'm like, this is a joke. Um, so yeah, I didn't realize that until I had the fight on my hands with Utah, what so many of us parents, sisters, husbands, wives, whatever, go through trying to get help.
So, Misty, if this turns out to be Shane's skull, does this kind of start another chapter of this whole thing in terms of going after whoever did this?
I'm gonna
Sure
say
hope-
yes.
I'm sorry, Misty. Candace is going to personally handle this.
Well, we've got another canine search planned. So we had it planned in November, and then torrential rains. I mean, ridiculous rains. There's no way. So now we're looking at probably end of June, July. Let the river come down, which will be great because we'll have the results back. So what this does from a search point of view, and Lane County has shared all the search maps, is we got Michael's search tracks, we've got Chase's, and we've got Shane's. So whoever it turns out to be, this is going to change where we run canines and how we search, right? So we're going in with full force. We're going to bring in 6 to 8 canines. We're going to come for like 7 days, and these aren't your, oh, I have a cadaver dog BS canines. These canines can find bones. I mean, they're legit. So we're just going to come in, but it'll change. So if we've got Shane's pickup, Shane's arm, and let's say this does turn out to be Shane, so that changes our range wings. We shrink the area when it comes to searching up there for Shane because there's more of them there. We just got to find them.
So, Candace, could you read off the names of the missing people, just because I think out of respect for their family?
Yeah. So we've got Michael Bryson, Shane Springer, and Chase Robertson up there are the three. And then, like I said, the one we just learned about from Tammy, which I will be looking into that, Eric Brazil. So, and obviously we got family members for everybody. We got full DNA. Once we pull the DNA from the skull, if it's not Shane, it'll move on a little more rapidly. That's the biggest thing right now, is getting the DNA pulled for it. They figured 10 to 12 weeks. It could be sooner. They don't have it yet, so they don't know. I don't know the state of the skull. It'd be interesting, like, is it male or female? Is there a nasal cavity that can be told by? How much of it do we have? We don't have that information yet.
Now, Linda put on here Fauna Frey? Isn't she missing down in Roseburg area? Do you know that name?
I'm not familiar with that one.
I know, Linda, that we had her dad or brother on the show once, but I think she determined she was missing, I think, down in more southern Oregon kind of area. Oh, okay. Linda,
Yep.
yeah, that's true. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
this probably isn't her skull, although near Grants Pass. That's what Tina's saying.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So
There's another name. And Linda, thank you for bringing that name up, because I would hate for somebody in their family to see it and not have us be sensitive to that as well, because this is just like such a horrible thing. So I have kind of a weird question for you, Candace.
okay.
What do you think Dylan would think of you today?
Oh, he always thought I was batshit crazy and ran around too fast. He would be thinking the same exact thing, like, chill, mom, chill.
Is that why when you do this? Is that why you're so committed?
Everything I've ever done, I've been committed, but Dylan was always the same way. I mean, here you got a 19-year-old who owns 640 acres. He bought his own farm. That's how he grew up. His dad was that way. His grandparents, we all always owned our own business. We were always self-efficient. We always ran 90 miles an hour. So I think he just, he would just he'd shake his head at me saying it's not that big of a deal, but you know, it is.
And somebody on here, Alicia says her last name is pronounced Ivswana Fry. And I just want to make sure I say that right, because that's how you say someone's name is very important, especially in different languages. So last thing is, how can people help you guys with what you do and get involved? Is that your dogs?
Yeah, they're
That's
laying
okay.
cake.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
it's just they're therapy dogs, but they're not
It's
being very
real life,
therapeutic
you
right
know?
now, right? Well,
So,
trust me, I've done lots of them where it's like, oh, the dogs are barking. You know, the biggest thing is, man, I run between searches, between conferences. I got one in Vegas next year that I got a bunch of law enforcement training. I'm going through 10 weeks of law enforcement training in Utah. We're trying to build a foundation that has the education and awareness, and we depend on the public. I mean, these searches and changing these laws, it's not cheap. We average well, and like Shane's mom, she's going, like I said, she paid for it, but then we got the state to cover it, so that's going to go towards a search. But I mean, there's a lot of these searches. We're upwards of $5,000-6,000 on just cost to get the handlers there, and that's all we cover is the cost. Like, we're all on our own food, and half the time we Airbnb together. Sometimes we're sleeping in vehicles. Any search team that ever tells a family, well, it's going to cost this much, it doesn't matter. If we don't raise the funds, I figure it out. I figured out through Dylan's Legacy, we get the funds elsewhere and we still come. But to get a true search, people of missing families need to stop bringing in the uncertified. We vetted 2 dogs when we were in Oregon on Dylan's bones, and that's just so disappointing. So these canines have been going out there taking money from the families, and their dogs can't even react to my son's bone that I'm packing with me. So that's all got to be reran. It's and Tina and Parrish, they witnessed it when we were there in January with Roxanne, and they witnessed what a dog and we didn't even tell them what we did. We just went and hit a piece of Dylan's bone out there, and they watched. They're like, holy shit. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you get a dog that knows what they're doing. They're not going to overrun them. So that's our biggest things. We're just always needing help with searches, and we don't go out and blindly search. Okay, we're not playing the 30-year-old missing person. That's not because they don't matter. Don't get me wrong. That's not where I'm going. We need an area. We need an idea. We don't blindly just go out and run dogs in terrain where you have nobody's last known location. You don't know anything about. They just disappeared because it burns resources. And we go out on cases like Shane and like Michael's, and we're probably going out for Vladik in May. We're very victim organized on the fact that we need a location. You just don't turn canines out to run. It just doesn't work.
Well, Misty, I just pray to God that this is Shane and that you can get some closure and hopefully an arrest or 2 or 3, and that your family can I don't think you ever get a ton of peace, but that you can. And I don't think anything I say that from this point on is just going to be stupid, because I don't
Right.
I haven't been you, and I have 2 sons, and I can't imagine this happening to them. That's why the Brysons just tear my heart out, because I've done so many stories on them. And I feel like I know Michael, and I can't wait to meet him someday. But it's, I'm sorry. And I guess I should probably just leave it at that, because everything else is, I can't relate to. But the other thing, I want to read Tina Magnuson's, Michael's mom's words here, because I think these are so important. There's so many missing people. We always need to be their voices, because their voices are taken away. And so let this sink in, people. Like, that's just folks that are watching. These people they were human beings. They had value. They had relatives, families, wives, husbands, sisters, brothers, uncles, aunts, and they were taken away. And so they don't have a voice anymore. And these are the relatives that are trying to be their voice, and we need to help them by changing laws. laws and making things, and quit judging people, you know, on, you know, I just hate that part of it. It makes me, that's the part that makes me want to scream, because maybe that's because we should all be able to relate to that. You know, if I disappeared when I was in my 20s, they would have said the same thing about me. He's probably just got too
Yeah.
stoned. You know, I mean, and yet we forget that. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
So Misty, thank you for coming on and being brave as always, and nice to see you again. Candace, you are one hell of a woman.
Thank you.
You are, and you're very articulate, and you can tell you care. And it makes me want to cry every time I keep looking up at you and I see your boy looking over your
Yeah, so but
he's still there looking over your head.
Yeah, it's my room. One thing I just want to leave people with is that you're not alone. There's always people, families like us. But we all have always, so it doesn't happen to families like us. It doesn't happen to us. I encourage people to get involved in public safety and to change things and pay attention at what's going on before it does happen to you, because it does happen to us.
Right.
And you can't stop it if you're not actively involved in what your public safety laws are around you. Yeah, so I encourage people, look up your state laws, read.
Hey, thank you both for being here. We appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for
right.
having us.
Oh, you're welcome. So I'm going to finish with I don't know what it is about the Brysons, but they seem to be very deep people. I love them very much. But Parrish, your words get to be the final words. You are who you are, not who you were. Your past does not define you. Huh. Wouldn't that be nice if we could remember that? You are who you are, not who you were. Your past doesn't define you. And, you know, that's just profound words. And my prayer would be that God would help these people find their families and put those things back together again. And that we would have the ability to change these laws and stop judging people based on who they were and start looking at them for who they could have been. Because that's what we missed out on. Shane had value. He brought something to people. So did Michael and the rest. They weren't supposed to die like that. Share this on your page if you would, so other people can see and maybe get involved. And you know, it's nice about, for me, I mean, a personal note, just to be around people like the Brysons and Candace and Misty and people like that. With all that's going on in the world, doesn't it feel good to feel something? You know, to have some hope. Yeah, it does. It feels good to have. To know that people love their families that much makes me want to smile, and it makes my day. Have a good night. Thanks for watching.